my mental framework is you come in and you first have to really learn the business. And you got to do it fast. You have to be driving alignment because it's not just important for you, it's really for the whole organization. One of the challenges that we had is we had kind of a fork in the road strategy.
Welcome to the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast, where we explore the latest in enterprise trends, tech, and strategy with the top leaders shaping the future.
Welcome to Enterprise Unlocked. I'm your host, Radhika Mukherjee, Editor-in-Chief of Talk CMO. Our guest today is Michelle Huff, the Chief Marketing Officer of Alteryx. Michelle oversees all aspects of global marketing, including product and solutions marketing, brand and customer advocacy, demand generation, and more at Alteryx. She has over 25 years of experience leading marketing and go-to-market strategies at several high-tech companies. Before Alteryx, Michelle was CMO at User Testing, guiding the company through startup, IPO, acquisition, and merger, all while strengthening customer engagement and advocacy. She also served as CMO at Acton Software and held leadership roles at Salesforce and Oracle, focusing on data management and data-driven workflows. That's quite a CV, Michelle, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Most welcome. And this is just going to be such an interesting and energizing and uplifting conversation. I can just feel it.
That's great. I think it's going to be wonderful.
It's going to be wonderful. So it's really not every day that a company reaches a milestone like achieving $1 billion ARR or annual recurring revenue, right? Alteryx reached that significant milestone. And we're here to discuss exactly what goes into building billion-dollar businesses.
Yeah.
Right?
Right? I know. I just, when you look back all the time, you're always seeing like these different stages of growth. And when you finally cross it, you're like, wow, it's kind of amazing.
It's here. And congratulations, by the way. It's an amazing achievement.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's start with the big billion-dollar question. Michelle, what's the marketing roadmap to $1 billion ARR?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. So, I think for me, what's interesting is you're hearing my background. With Alteryx, I got to come towards the tail end, right? So sometimes when you're at companies through this journey, you see different phases. And so from this lens, you get to see all the things that the company has tried and really what kind of brought it to each different stage. And when I've been reflecting of the Alteryx journey, because I started about 9 months ago, and really helped cross the 1 billion mark, what really drew me to the company, and I think where a lot of the growth comes from, is just number one, the product market fit. I mean, it really is a great product and solution, and we have just amazing customers, right? Just the customer base and the end users. It's interesting. Even when I've gone to I live in Seattle, so I've gone to Eastern Washington before, and I was at some little town at a grocery store, and the person at the grocery store saw my logo. I was like, "Oh, you work for Alteryx?" He's like, "Oh, I know Alteryx. I love it." And you hear that, which is just kind of amazing. And, I think what the company had always really done is tap into that love of the product, the end user, just joy of using it, and really created a lot of programs and a lot of marketing and a brand that really centered on that. And so I feel like that was a huge one. But then I think complementing it wasn't really just the end users, but really emphasizing the business impact that it was making. So there's, coming here and talking to a lot of different customers and leaders, people say, "Oh yeah, I've saved millions of dollars because of Alteryx. I have been able to automate so many processes." They're like, it's, they'll literally put hours, the thousands of hours that are saved, literally from using the product and what that enables them to be able to do. So I think it's really, from a marketing standpoint, if the product matters, right? And the solution matters, but then how you actually, sometimes people don't really capitalize, I feel like, on that community and the end user passion and love, or they might not really emphasize as much the business, ROI and the impact, because you really need both of those. And so I think that, as the company's really grown and scale, as you can imagine, a company of 100 people versus 500, 2,000, right? Like every scale has a different kind of evolved go-to-market motion. And I think the team had really done a nice job of creating programs that scaled through each kind of stage of growth.
That's wonderful. And what's your mental framework for leading Alteryx through this period of growth and transformation?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, coming in, for me, what I've really learned over time is marketing, there really is never like a single playbook, right? Where you just, once you've figured out the recipe, you just come into each company and just rinse and repeat. Because especially in marketing land, I mean, it changes so much on, the product and solutions that you're offering, like, what level of market fit you have, but also what is your go-to-market motion? A marketing organization for more of a product-led growth versus enterprise selling versus targeting, you know, kind of SMB. I mean, all those things have very different go-to-market motions. What stage of growth you're in, the state of the market, like right now is a little, a little different versus like 5 years ago. So all of these kind of things and the strength of your brand, all of those impact what your strategy needs to be. So, I always feel like my mental framework is you come in and you first have to really learn the business. And you got to do it fast, but you're trying to understand all of these parts of what are your offerings, and how you're trying to bring that to market. And so, learn the business, then as well, from a second part is, with me joining about 9 months ago, there was a new leadership change about 9 months before I had joined. And so kind of a lot of new reinvestment in product innovation, reinvestment in the company. And so a part of that is trying to figure out how to quickly kind of build my leadership team, build out the team, and then, and then try to figure out, hey, what are my priorities, and then drive alignment on that. Because I think sometimes the hard things, you come up with the priorities from marketing, but you really have to make sure it's the priority set that we're trying to change as a leadership team.
Wonderful. And do you have any like learning models or even priority models that you follow at all?
I don't have any like specific models, but I think that I'm a big alignment person. So I'm a huge, it's like you first, maybe it's like my past, even at user testing, it's the test and learn, and you're constantly getting feedback. And so, you first kind of come in and start figuring out what your priorities are, but then you need to talk to a lot of people across the organization, better understand what they're trying to do. What are the priorities of your CRO and what you're trying to do from a revenue standpoint? What do we think the priorities are from the product organization? And maybe, what we do at Alteryx is leverage the V2 Mom. Have you heard of the V2 Mom before?
No, it would be great to learn more though.
Yeah, so V2 Mom was originally started by Mark Benioff at Salesforce, and it's something that my CEO, but I also learned when I was at Salesforce. And the two V's, the first stands for vision, right? So what are we setting out to do? And then the second is values. And so you can imagine, if you have a vision, there's different ways that you can go about, going towards your vision, and what values are going to hold as you grow and change. And so those are the two V's. And then the mom part is the first one is methods.
Okay.
You got a big charter. What are the things that you really feel like you need to do, and you can't do them all, right? So it's that like special Goldilocks of trying to figure out, right? Is it like what top 5 things, for example, are you really feel like if you're going to move the needle and head towards that vision, what do you need to do as a marketing organization? And then the O stands for obstacles. And so, if you actually have ever tried to do something and you write it down, and you actually start thinking through, what are my roadblocks? Right? Nothing's ever easy. What is it? I don't have enough revenue or like budget, is it because my team's too small? Is it because this is in our way? So if you actually take the time to write down what your obstacles are, it's important. And then the last is measures, right? Your metrics. So how are you going to measure that at the end of the year you made a difference? And so the whole process of V2 Mom is a prioritization where you sit down and you look at your methods, and then you are supposed to debate, is number one more important than two? Is number two more important than three? And you really talk about it quite a bit with your team, but then you also do it across your leadership team. So it's really an exercise in alignment, because when you go through and realize I've got my whole V2 Mom, but it's different, like it doesn't align with some of the other leaders, like that's a flag. And so it really starts where the CEO has a V2 Mom, and then it cascades down, and literally every single person in an entire organization has one. And then you have ability to look at it and realize what you're doing and how that's driving the entire company strategy, which is pretty cool.
This is like aligned prioritization, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is, I think, important because, I think when you're a smaller organization, it's a lot easier to get alignment, right? You can be like, hey, I'm going to do these, like, what are you going to do? And you can kind of quickly pivot and change. I think as you get larger and larger organizations, the pivoting, the changing also has a cost, right? And so the more that you can drive alignment. A long time ago, someone mentioned to me that, as a leader, you might think that you just have a little disagreement or a little misalignment. It's not a big deal. But as you start seeing it through the rest of the organization, those little things become huge friction points across the company. So I think it's really important, especially, in the role that I have, you have to be driving alignment, because it's not just important for you. It's really for the whole organization.
Wow. And on that note of being aligned, what's your main mandate as a CMO? And how are you translating that also into your marketing strategies and tactics?
Yeah, so, coming into Alteryx, I think what's been fantastic is it's, I mentioned a wonderful product, a great solution. And what's been interesting is we've been around for over 25 years. And it's a solution that has really helped companies, just deal with complex, kind of messy data, and really, able to take that data. Oftentimes, we're automating all of the steps that lead from data to insight, and so it's powered like dashboards and reports and alerts and all these different things. But in today's world with AI, it's shifting and changing, and how we need to really connect to what we're doing in the market and how the market is leaning to today. And so the charter of really coming in when the CEO called and we were talking through what my expectations of the role is first really reintroducing Alteryx to the market. We have this brand and the awareness of what people know about us and love, but we've been really adapting and changing and innovating on our strategies. And so really the goal is to help connect that to where we're going, as well as kind of modernize the brand. And then number two, pipeline. Just because we crossed the billion, it doesn't stop there. You don't get to hang your hat. It's usually, when do you get to two? And so, pipeline, and a big part of the charter there is to build the machine for this next phase. And so that's been a huge part of it. And then the third is really kind of org transformation using AI, which I think a lot of leaders have right now, where they're taking a look at AI and trying to reimagine and rethink, how does an organization need to start operating as we kind of move into this kind of next phase of technology.
And so, keeping all of this, the mandate in mind, what are some of the biggest shifts you've put into motion since you joined?
Yeah, so, the first shift, the first one that I did is, really coming in. I think one of the challenges that we had is we had kind of a fork in the road strategy where in the past we had almost two product lines that were being built. And so one of the product lines had a huge number of customers and a lot of passion and love. And the other one was starting to get a lot more of the innovation and technology. And so we've now brought that together to really start bringing the innovation to the product that people have really been using over all these years. And so there's been a big shift in how we think about that line, and there's Alteryx One. But there's also, as a company, we've we've really struggled also to really define like who we are and what we do. And as mentioned, really then connect it to these market shifts of what's happening. So coming in, I thought it was really important to help establish what is our corporate narrative? Like, what are we here to do as a company? Because it's really hard when you feel like through all that change, people aren't quite sure what they're rallying around. And so a big part of it was really working with the CEO and the head chief product officer to align on like, how do we articulate who we are and what we're going to do and how we communicate that to the world. So we built out kind of a corporate narrative. We've been working on the corporate messaging. Actually, it was really awesome. We've kicked off for the whole company. Everyone's being certified. So we have courses and everyone literally needs to stand and deliver and kind of walk through like who we are, what we do, and so that's been like a big effort. But I think it's been, I mean, what's been awesome is literally even having, I think someone in engineering just texted me the other day and said, I just took it and it just made a lot of sense. Like that was great. And so, hard to get that from, I'm married to an engineer. You don't get that from the engineering side for marketing. So that was like a really big shift because I'm a big believer in words, words matter in the HIP meeting, and having a whole company aligned around what we're doing is important. And so that was a big part of the reintroducing, is getting us aligned. And then second is, we've been around for 25 years. And so we really wanted to signal to the market, there's a little something different about us. Like we've been changing, and we wanted to really modernize how our look and feel and how we came across. And so we've, made some big brand refreshes as well, which was kind of a big undertaking, and launching new campaigns. And then another part of really rebuilding some of the team is some of the operational improvements that we've been doing. And so trying to get a lot more data driven within all the marketers so that we can really build that machine. And so kind of arming them with a lot more dashboards, a lot more data to make decisions.
You can already see the success with the feedback from your team member, of course.
Yes.
So in this reintroduction of Alteryx to the world, how did you tell us a little bit more in granular detail? How did you go about transforming and modernizing the messaging for the brand, especially?
Yeah, well, the hard one, and maybe a lot of other marketing leaders can empathize. We didn't have a big budget, so sometimes, in the past, you just get to hire, an expensive agency and put a lot of money into that. And so we did have an agency to help. A part of it was really doing a refresh, and we're doing some of it in phases. And so we kicked it all off actually just in March at the Gartner Data and Analytics Summit, which was awesome. And our big customer conference is actually next month. So Inspire is coming up. And so it's kind of a 1-2 punch where we're kind of doing a big thing for our customers and having a lot of the other assets really done there. But I think what was really exciting, I think, about this brand relaunch is that we tied it to the corporate narrative effort. And so really coming in was trying to help articulate to the company, like, who are we, what we're trying to do. And then, we did a lot of communication to, there's a lot of the employees have been with the company. There's some people have been here for like 20 years and, 15 years. And so, change can be hard. And so, having someone come in and being like, we're going to make all these changes, right? It can be, they'll do it, but I want people to really be bought in and love it. And so we did a lot of communication internally to get people like understanding what we're going to be changing. And so we tied that to the narrative, and then to the alignment piece. What was amazing is the head of product coordinated to rebrand the entire product look and feel. And so the head of UX and him kind of went through, like, we actually partnered on the colors to make sure that it all like stood out in the product as well as website as well as us. And then the chief customer officer with our training and community, all of that was done at the same time too. And so when we kind of kicked it off with the company, it was really this unified effort, not just marketing. I think sometimes what happens is people think of rebrands as just a marketing effort, and it's just, it's logos and colors. And so, what I thought was really important is making sure it wasn't just a marketing effort, and also it had the backing of like, this was really the CEO's mandate. And this is what we're trying to do as a company. And then having, our CRO, CPO, it also partnered really well with our people and culture team. And so they're the ones helping with all the company certifications as well. And so, all of the internal corporate communications and all of that was really done at the same time. So it was really kind of this amazing, like, aligned effort, just even with a lot of the rebrand. My demand team and corporate marketing spent a lot of time working together as well to make sure it kind of flowed from each of those kind of departments. And so, yeah, I'd say like the really, we had so much like love, and everyone was excited internally, and and it really just came across so well. And we had, because I remember when I first mentioned it internally at an all hands, and I was like, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to make some changes. We're going to keep the brand, I'm not changing Alteryx, I'm not changing the logo. And someone was like, are we going to have a Crackle Bear moment? I was like, oh, I hope we don't have one. I was like, I want, and so, it was really great to kind of go through the effort and have lots of people be like, connecting me and say, even now customers and ACE programs, people saying, hey, I really love what you guys are doing with the brand, with the company. It seems much more modern and fresh, but also people just saying, hey, what you're saying just makes sense. And so, we tied that with the launch as well as with the kind of momentum release, because it was really around when we crossed the 1 billion mark, and, kind of showcase that we had 380 million workflows that we're powering now within companies. And so it was kind of a big moment to really tie, brand refresh to all these things that we're doing as a company.
That's amazing. That's so inspiring, because it's just a full-on transformation, internal and external, and you're getting that great feedback also. That's just amazing.
Yeah, no, I'm a big feedback person.
That's what the best part, I think, of marketing is, in a way, right? Getting that feedback, acting on
Yeah,
it.
totally.
Cool. So, let's go to the role of the modern CMO. Okay. So, how do you really look at the role? Okay. Especially in building a brand strategy in the world of AI, and even the next stage of AI.
I know. I think we're trying to figure it out. So if there's someone listening that feels like they figured it out, let me know. But I'd say that, for me, I think number one, you just have to be the mindset of staying curious and adapting. I think what's been fascinating to me is, some of this really reminds me of I started my career in the late 90s and in technology, and it was when building websites. And so back in those days, that was like the big thing. Everyone's like, oh, you can create these websites and these digital applications, and you can do everything. Right? So the whole digital transformation was like a thing, and like the .com bubble and all of that. And so, there's a lot of things that this reminds me of that kind of phase. But it feels even more accelerated, and obviously in a different kind of role. Maybe now I can more empathize with the pressure my leaders might have been under during that time. But I think what's been even fascinating is joining Alteryx nine months ago. I feel like the market, what's been changing with AI, even our product and what we've been releasing, like everything continues to scale and get faster. And you're constantly like, in the spirit of like repositioning and messaging, when we first were talking about AI at the beginning of the company, people were like, oh, that's not what we do. Right. So even now everyone's, and there was like different phases where we would mention how we work with agents, and I was like, oh, no. And then now it was like, oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like that's exactly. And like, and then you see what the market is talking about. And it just, I think what's interesting for brand is, being able to stand out in the crowd, be relevant. It is interesting when that is all kind of changing. And so, I think from a head of marketing standpoint, right, being curious is I think you really have to stay on top of customer sentiment, market. But I think, especially in B2B tech, you have to stay on top of the technology. And so really staying curious and using for yourself a lot of the different technologies and be able to really start, rethinking how you need to actually adapt and change. And I there's some parts of marketing that I do feel like are pretty traditional and like they're going to stay. Like, I a lot of the efforts that we did around our branding, I do believe, your brand ambassadors, right? It's not just the logos, it's how people, what they think and say about you. And so your employees and how they talk about you make a huge difference, but also your customers and how they talk about you, right? Like that's a big part of the brand. And so, in this world, next phase of AI, some of that, it's just inherent of the people part, and some of those things don't really change. It's a lot of the tried and true marketing stuff. But then I think there are some new things, especially where maybe in the last 5-10 years you could think of like search engine optimization being more of like a plug and play thing, and wow, that's completely now like changed. It's changed how you think about budgets. And so I think having a part of your strategy and your budget where you're constantly experimenting is important, and then not forgetting and going astray from some more of the traditional things that are just a part of what makes marketing work.
You said experimenting. So where does, creativity play in also in the modern marketer's role?
Yeah, I feel like marketing is such a creative thing, and you can be creative in lots of different ways, right? I think some of it's the creativity in your writing. I think it's I always feel like there's this pendulum where, I think early in my career, the writing used to be more long form, right? You'd have white papers. You'd literally have like 5 or 6 page white papers. I remember writing a lot of those. And then suddenly, right, like pendulum swings and no one has the attention span. Everything has to be a video and a, short, 2-minute clip, or not even 2 minutes, 30-second clip, right? And everything's short form. And then now you can see people like they're craving more of the long form things again. They're right? Like even, some of the podcasts that I listen to are like 2 hours, which are kind of crazy, but I love it. And, but you can see like the resurgence. And then even with AI now, like, having more well thought out points of views, content. So I sometimes feel like there's this pendulum where, we kind of come full circle. We're back to kind of the long form. So creativity is like, being able to spot where things are trending towards, and then how do you really start adapting maybe your writing for that? How do you kind of stand out a little differently from, some of the activities or things that you do? What I love actually, we're doing this Inspire customer conference, and we're sponsors of McLaren Formula One, and we have this like amazing activity that's the Grand Prix. And the Grand Prix is this whole experience where during the time there, individuals come and you create Alteryx workflows, and you time yourself, right? And you're trying to qualify to see if you can do this in a certain amount of time. And like, if you qualify, you're on stage competing with a few other people in this like Grand Prix race. And like the whole crowd is like cheering and racing. It's like this amazing experience. And so I feel like, trying people really love experiences. And the more that you can use your creativity, whether it be in digital form or in person, I think are really important.
And creativity is never going to go out of fashion, right?
Right. I think we're just wired that way. And then funny thing is, once everything starts being similar, it's like creativity is just, taking something just a little different, from maybe a different industry or different, context, and bringing it in, and it's delightful. People like that spark of something different and new.
Exactly.
Yes.
Great. So we move from creative to technical, right? So what's the marketing tech stack like at Alteryx? Are there any tools or solutions you'd like to mention as like, things you really like, notable success?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, I mean, maybe like all marketing organizations, yeah, we got a lot of technology, and but maybe one that we just launched this year, in the spirit of being creative, it's actually with OneMind. Have you heard of OneMind?
Not.
Yeah, so OneMind, they actually have what they call superhumans, and we've been calling them AI agents. And but it's what's interesting is you can go to our website and Annie, we have Alteryx Annie, and Annie is a way for us to really scale our SDR inbound kind of motion. And so basically on the website, um, you know, there's she kind of pops up and you can engage with her like a chat bot if you would like. But you can also, turn on your speaker and just have a conversation. And she'll give a demo. She'll, answer questions, have use cases, and basically she's doing discovery questions. It's pretty great. And what's helpful is oftentimes, I think we have especially, a lot of buyers where usually the next step in marketing is always like, hey, do you want to book a meeting? Do you want to book a meeting? And sometimes like, I just want to like ask a few questions, and you're making me like browse all over your website and try to find, I just want to talk to someone, but in today's world, not everyone wants to talk to a sales rep yet. They're not ready. And so it's such a great experience to just really have Annie there. And she really, is able, we literally have her so that we can be training, and so she's always the latest and greatest on the messaging and information, and really kind of has been helping to drive some of that consistency as we drive through a brand. And so we just launched in January, I think at the end of January. So she's been out for like 2 months, and we're doing a lot of iterating testing, and she's already like helped. We already can see the pipeline of the amount of deals that she's been influenced in closing, and at the right time, she introduces to help, someone can speak to a real life person, but it's really kind of creating a new different experience on the website, which I think is pretty cool.
Wow. And she's actually probably filled a need, like plugged a gap.
Oh yeah, right. Because a lot of times when you're trying to do the inbound, you're trying to really make sure that when you're sending over leads to sales, right? It's always the never ending where we're like, oh, we sent you all these leads, and they're like, oh, but they're not good quality, right? Like, and so you're really trying to make sure that you're finding like the right people to send over their way, and so it's just like such amazing good quality, and people are much more ready to have a buying conversation because they've had a chance to really explore and ask questions kind of beforehand.
And Annie is an agentic AI program, is that right? Okay. Awesome. And how else are you using AI or agentic AI in marketing?
Yeah, we've got probably like a lot of organizations, a whole smattering of different things. So I think, from an AI standpoint, we are using, similar to what we're doing with OneMind, a lot of our packaged applications or technology that we purchased have AI that we're incorporating in different places, like even with Adobe and Canva, and how we're using the different presentation tools and all these things have AI kind of baked in. We also have licenses for LLMs, so OpenAI internally, and so a lot of personal productivity. I'm sure all the GPTs that people have. We've been doing all these interesting ones for content creation and the voice of people and such. But maybe the new ones that we're focused on is a little bit more around actual process transformation. So we have one that we have in production that is supporting the outbounding kind of SDR efforts. And so what we do is it's kind of a combination of AI and Alteryx, where we take leads from one source. And normally, if you think of all the steps that SDRs do, is you find the lead, and then you have to go look into Salesforce to understand all the information about that account and about the lead status. And then you go to LinkedIn, and then you have to go to Marketo, and you have all these different kind of places. And so we automate all that enrichment process. And then we also check against all of the GDPR and all the different kind of rules and regulations. And then we have a step with the AI where it goes and automatically creates kind of an outbounding email based on a lot of the context that we have. And then it goes into their kind of outreach tool. And so then they can walk in, have all their leads, have a set kind of email that they can customize or make any changes. But the email, looks at all that context to create more personalization. And so we've been using that kind of flow for that process and been seeing different kind of results and uplift from using it. And so now we're going to be applying that to our inbounding efforts as well. So those ones are kind of going. We're also looking at the full kind of content creation lifestyle because we have these like individual ways that we're doing it, but what we're trying to do is really take that whole end to end from like where can we use AI to help create the briefs, to help create the content, create some of the applying the look and feel, and then the kind of alignment on the web content side. And so what we would like to do is really have the human, right, like play a role in having a lot of ideas of what they're trying to drive, but having a lot of those steps kind of through that whole process with lots of teams automated. And that one's taking a little longer because it's a cross-departmental team, but we really feel like if we can get this one, we're in kind of pilot phase right now, but starting to see some good traction, but not ready yet to share all the results. But I think that one it'll be good.
Great. Thanks for giving us a sneak peek. That was very interesting to just even hear about, and I'm sure it'll help a lot of people who are trying to build something similar.
Yes.
So let's go into the ongoing controversy, right? The AI human debate. So how is it playing out in Alteryx? Is it playing out as human versus AI or human plus AI?
I think it's human plus AI. Like in my mind, because AI has been around for quite some time. Generative AI is really where, with the LLMs, has kind of been sparking a lot more ideas and a lot more of the conversation. Have you ever heard of Gary Kasparov?
Yes, the chess champion?
Yeah. So he's the chess champion. I love the story because for me, he was the Grandmaster chess champion who was the first person that the IBM Deep Blue, which is the AI, actually beat in chess. And that was like the big pivotal moment years ago where everyone's like, oh no, the computer just beat. Because people used to be like, no, chess is always, something that wins. And I think what's interesting about his story is at first he was pretty frustrated, but then he started to use AI with kind of what he was doing, and he started to prove out that sometimes, right, the computer can beat the human, but a computer can't beat a human plus computer, and he was calling them like centaurs. And so it was really the better results were always with a person that was with AI. And I feel like a lot of that's proving out from what we see. I think it's shifting and changing the kinds of work. Like in my mind, what I've been trying to talk with the team about is when I think about kind of these different phases is in the past, if you think about what technology has really helped people do is kind of automate processes and systems, right? And so there was like a systems way, like how do I repeat these things and do this at scale, right? And like that was, the lead to opportunity process, right? Is like where technology comes in. And I think what's interesting about AI and more of the agents is it's not just the process, it's literally the role. And so when you're working and when you're thinking of the agent, it kind of shifts the role of the human. Like if I gave you an intern, most people in the organization are like, hey, if I could double the resources, like what would you do? And normally you'd be like, oh, I got to think about like the role, right? Because you normally wouldn't say, hey, just have an intern and then onboard them, let them like read everything on the intranet and then go. Right? Like normally there'd be a little structure, right? Like you'd be like, oh, this intern or this person that's starting has a specific like set of things that they should do, and then the person's job is to like, you know, be delegating. And normally that first step as a manager is always the hardest of learning what can you actually delegate because you're still responsible for the outcome, right? Like even if there's an agent, like you now, like similar to having the intern, you know, you have to understand what the role is. You have to give a certain amount that you trust will be done, you know, well, and then be able to inspect and make sure the outcome matches. And so it's kind of shifting and changing, I think, how people think of what their role is versus the agent. You know, and it's usually tasks that, you know, I think today it's not really like a full complete role. It's really just supplementing like certain tasks and things that you couldn't have done before. And so, you know, I think for us, it's really, you know, in marketing land, oftentimes we always have this ratio of people versus program dollars, right? So you normally have to have someone driving the strategy, right? And like that remains true, even if some of the things that are being done are through programs, through outsourcing, through agents. And so I think that's it's just an interesting way to kind of scale an organization.
So I saw with what you were saying, it felt like it's assistive intelligence rather than really this artificial intelligence or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, because I think accountability matters. I mean, it's like, you know, with autonomous things, I mean, I think, you know, I think we're all in marketing land familiar with automation and things kind of being done. I think what AI adds, the generative part adds some additional levels of automation that we really hadn't been able to imagine before, right? Like now when we see some of the coding, like my web developer literally was using some like the codex to actually rewrite some of our navigation and was pretty like blown away because you're just like, this is amazing. While he's doing something else, it's like kind of going, and then you can go and check on the work and be like, that's great, you know. And so it changes. But like if the whole website goes down because something's wrong with the navigation, we can't just be like the robots did it, right? Like the person who's, you know, there's accountability matters, someone who owns it matters. But I think the being able to actually, you know, do things assisted and being smart about what things you're going to automate, I think do kind of have some level of transformational change in a marketing organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the data that you feed into the AI is so important, right? So, what's your advice for marketing teams? How can they make the most of their data in this age of AI and, you know, leading into the LLMs and so on and so forth?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, you know, for us in particular, from a data standpoint, I think there's a lot of opportunity. Like, number one, you know, we have so much data that's generated everywhere, and normally, the hard part is when we're trying to get insights from the data. It's like this super manual, you know, Excel spreadsheets. People are downloading and doing all these different things. And sometimes you get to the insight and you're like, ooh, that's great. Can we see this now on a frequent basis? And sometimes people on the team are like, do you know how long that took us? Like, we can't do this every week, right? And so I think, you know, for me, like one of the reasons why I love Alteryx is because like it automates all of that. So then it starts to unlock a whole different way of like being able to get to these insights in a more like consistent way. And so I think the more that you can automate your data and insights, the better. And then I think what's shifting and changing too is, you know, oftentimes, you know, there's usually this like set dashboard, and then what always happens, I don't know if you know, every time you look at dashboards, I'm sure you see it for the podcast, and you're like, oh, that's great. And then you look at it and you have more questions. You're like, ooh, I wonder. And you ask like 5 more questions, but the dashboard doesn't do it that way, right? And I think kind of the next step of what people are wanting to do is actually take a lot of that data and feed it into the LLMs so that you can have conversations around your data, or conversational analytics where, you know, you want to ask questions like, well, when, you know, which campaign do you think that is going okay? If we had to double down on one, what would we double down on? You can use natural language to be asking questions, and it could be on the fly, taking a lot of the data and actually creating views and visualizations. And so I think it unlocks a whole different way of arming all of the campaign marketers, program managers of their data, because they can ask questions in a different way. I think the tricky part is always making sure, today LLMs don't do math very well. And, and hallucinations happen. And you're like, hey, where did that, and so I think for us, this is where Alteryx, I think, being able to automate those steps and serve it for different kind of interface matters, because you can always kind of trust where the data comes from. And then, I think the third thing with data is, if you can really start automating more, so you get more insights, empowering more people on the team, you know, it can drive a different level of kind of productivity. Like we even have I think we have a whole initiative internally to have everyone be getting their own insights instead of just the insights team. And so like even my field marketer is always wanting to work with her sales team and taking a lot of the data that comes from you'll go to an event and they'll give you kind of their lists, and you're trying to understand, are there certain accounts that are already there? And like all this work, usually people don't have bandwidth for. And so kind of creating a way that she can actually go in and create those insights and serve that to her team has been kind of really an empowering way of working with data. And then I think kind of the next level is if more of these things, these flows are automated, I think it does unlock a different way of using agents and agentic automation, because what that is really doing is taking these workflows, right, and actually orchestrating them for different processes. And if a lot of those things are already built and trusted, and you're confident in those outcomes, you can really leverage them for kind of this new way of doing work.
And you're actually empowering marketing in a way it's never been empowered before, and do things that have never been done before.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly empowering, just having people being able to have the insights to make smarter decisions, because everyone's wanting to, they've got a certain amount of budget and they're trying to hit their targets. And if you have more insights, at your fingertips where you can make those decisions, right, it's even more powerful.
That's very inspiring, seriously. So now we spoke about brand a lot, right? And brand is emerging really as a significant growth factor. As you said, even when you go to an event or you have your own events, it is the Alteryx name that it probably resonates the most, right? So what are the essentials of brand building for B2B companies, especially in this time that we're in?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think from a brand standpoint, yeah, I think the people, maybe it's kind of some of the things that we were talking about before. I think really the people matter, right? Your brand is more than just the logos and the colors. It's who you are. It's how people think of you. It's the context that they think of you. And so from a brand building standpoint, I think I'm a big messaging kind of, you can tell, kind of alignment person, and thinking about all your kind of different communities. Today, when there's so much noise and there's so much, common things that are being said, I think the more that you can actually invest in brand, it just, it's your reputation, because sometimes there's certain message and tactics you can do in marketing that will get you a lot of the clicks, the responses. But at the end of the day, right, it's your reputation, your credibility is really what helps actually close business and get you the business, right? And so, you're trying to find ways to stand out. But at the end of the day, I think making sure that people understand the value that you have, the impact, and I'm a big fan of speaking to value through the voice of your customers. And so there's a lot of emphasis around making sure that you shine a light on your end users, as well as kind of the leaders who are really buying the solutions, the impact that they're seeing. And if you can really help them tell their stories, And that builds kind of the credibility, that is kind of the halo around your brand.
That's a wonderful framework, I think, for anybody to follow for sure, especially in B2B. Thank you. Okay, so you mentioned community also, right? So, and I know that the Alteryx community is massive and has great levels of engagement also. So, how are you and of course Alteryx in general shaping and investing in your brand communities? What are the strategies? What are the tactics?
Yeah. So our community, what's great is my chief customer officer owns, we actually partner on a lot of the community activities. He's a huge fan and advocate of a lot of the community activities. And so they do a ton around our user groups. And we just launched a brand new community with the rebrand. It was actually on a new technology so that we brought it all together to have, we have, which is kind of amazing, 760,000 people in that community. And we have weekly challenges that people do. So every week there's kind of an interesting, it's usually creative and super fun, kind of quirky challenge. And people will all go and try to see how quickly they can solve the challenge. It's not just engagement, but it's helping people build their data skills, help them understand how to use the technology, right? Their data savviness. And so there's a lot of reasons why it's helpful. And people, sometimes you just, if you're trying to learn something, sometimes you just need like a forcing function to just make yourself do something. So, I love that we have these little activations like the weekly challenges to keep people engaged, but also help them progress their learnings and their journey. And so we actually love a lot of the hands-on. So we've been investing in our academy. And so some of the things that we've been doing there too is creating a better experience. We're going to have some premium content as well with more hands-on training and courses. And we always do that at our customer conference as well. It's one of the greatest draws is around a lot of the training that people get with the academy. And so, we make huge investments into those kind of customer success services. And then I think on the marketing side, we do a lot of partnership there, but also a lot of customer advocacy. So there's things around our ACE program that we've been building out, and we have they're usually the ones who are the most savvy, the ones who are really dedicated and passionate. They can really be brand ambassadors, and we really are starting to invest to make sure that our leadership team has a direct kind of relationship with them, because we always love the feedback, and we also feel like they'll tell it like it is, which is great because you always need like direct feedback, which is really important. And then we're really investing. We're doing our customer awards and doing a lot more around our advisory boards, and so just really making sure that the voice of the customer kind of programs are really kind of pulling through.
Wow. And with community building, academy, and all of this, can you tell me how it's benefiting the brand? Just to tie a ribbon around it.
Yeah, well, I think that with the community parts, it really, the hard thing about technology, you always kind of see like the graphs where Gartner has their the hype cycle, and there's the trough of disillusionment that people go through, and they map it to buying journeys too, right? Like when people are, in the middle of purchasing something, their highest point is usually like right when they sign the contract, because like they're so excited. And then normally then the low is like, oh, the realities of trying to get it used and rolled out and all that different type of stuff. And so for me, I really feel like, and when you come out the other side, if as a company you can be helping to invest and make sure that that people can have the right training, the community, the learnings to really kind of quickly go through that and have a better experience. That's when people say, like, what was your experience with Alteryx? And that's when people say, I really love it. I love using it. They have all the different, when you're trying to figure out what to do, if you can go to some place and have other people immediately right there help you as well. I mean, like that's even more than just kind of reaching out to support. So I think all of that creates a lot of the brand, um, affection and love. And, it's really a different channel that you can really capitalize on. We also have a program where a lot of universities will also leverage and have courses and curriculums that leverage Alteryx. And so they're sometimes a big part of our community as well.
And kind of all it seems to be kind of becoming like a virtuous cycle, essentially.
Yeah, right. I mean, because then, that's when it's interesting because a lot of sales cycles and stuff, you'll see where people will say, oh, like someone in the organization had used us before or had heard about us before, or someone mentioned it to them. And so, just even we were onboarding a new agency, and one of them was like, oh yeah, I sometimes use Alteryx. I've used it in my last company. And so like you see that kind of come through, and if people because it's not just, for us, it's not just like you create it and you're done. You want them to get the most value, which means you want them to expand their use cases and expand the different ways that they're working. And so I think that's where community, plays a big role as well.
And we are talking about how everything comes back again. So is B2B marketing moving back to offline because there's so much saturation in digital channels?
Yeah, no, I think I remember I was talking about that because I always used to joke. My mom used to always tell me, because when I was young and I used to look at her bell bottoms and I was like, what? This is back in like the 80s where everything was like the tight jeans, and my mom's like, oh, don't you wear it? Like it all comes back. And I sometimes think about that with marketing. We talk about that pendulum because, I do, I mean, pre-pandemic, I do remember, there was definitely events where people, they would go, but like they would not engage, and they'd be like not paying attention or attending the set, right? Like it disconnected in person. But then going through the pandemic, I mean, I remember when we would have, digital experiences where we had a cocktail kind of person come, and people were craving, right? They were like craving human interaction. So they were like, this is novel, this is amazing. And then they hit that point where I was like, if I have to sit on another webinar, like I'm done. And so I do, and it's taken a little while, I feel like, for people to really start prioritizing going to events. But I think right now what's been amazing is when you do go, people are there for purpose, right? Like the level of engagement, the level of like, people appreciate the in-person experiences more. And I feel like as long as that's kind of in fashion, I think, it's important to leverage and capitalize on that. And so we actually, events are doing really well when we look at kind of all the different things that we do. So we have a lot of road shows, and we go to third person events because we get a lot of value from that.
So hopefully it all balances out as well.
Yes. and right when you start building, it'll change again, right? But that's marketing.
And you have to get creative, basically. Yeah. So let's close with this question. What's your message for all future CMOs?
Okay. I guess for future CMOs, I mean, maybe when I reflect back on, depending on listeners and where you're at in your journey, I think what's hard is when you go through the path, all the things that you get all your attaboys and attagirls and shout outs are not always the next thing that gets you to, that makes you successful at the next level, right? From individual contributor to kind of director to VP to CMO, right? And I think what I want people to hear is like when you decide to take that next kind of step, like the reason why you're in the room is because you're good at solving problems, right? Not because you're supposed to have all the answers. And I think that gets really hard because when you're starting early on, you're used to having all the answers, especially if you become like director level, like you are the person like Like, I love the way I see my role is I have a lot of advisors, right? Because my head of demand, she's amazing. She knows way more about demand gen than I do. And my head of corporate marketing has all this amazing like knowledge about brand that I don't have. My head of and that's what I want. You should be hiring people who are amazing, even better at better at those things than what you have. And also, like the person that's focused on SEO and AEO and like they know even way more than I do, right? And so, you get to this phase where you're used to knowing, right? Like all this stuff. And then you start taking on new roles and you start owning all these functions and you don't know. And that can be really hard for people in that shift. And that's where a lot of times people start feeling like the imposter syndrome. And, I think for me, that uncomfortable feeling, I've just learned to accept as that is what learning and growing feels like. And it's okay. And the reason why you're in this role is because you're good at solving problems and you might not have the answers now, but surround yourself by people and you will figure it out. And I feel like that confidence helps you grow. And then I think, knowing that you also I think the higher you go, like you just have to get better at receiving feedback. And sometimes it can be really uncomfortable. And I think that, but the better you are at getting feedback, right? The better that you can be as a leader, better that you can be as a business partner across the teams. And so, I think all those different steps are important as you kind of grow in your career.
It's really about managing the mindset.
Totally. Well, it's my favorite quote is like the only thing, because I especially feel like for marketers, we can be so type A sometimes, right? Like there's certain things you want to have but like the only thing you can completely control is how you choose to respond to something. And, it's like, and if you accept that, right? Like, cause you can get really angry at the feedback and be like, oh, it's because the person, said it wrong, or who are they to actually tell me these, like you come up with all these kind of things, yeah? But like how you choose to hear the feedback is in your control. And like, for me, I think that's really empowering because if you can change your thoughts, your mindset, how you choose to respond to something, I mean, it changes the whole dynamic of the relationship that you have with other people. And ultimately that's all in your control.
And that's really the mark of a true leader as well, right?
I hope so.
Absolutely. Then that was just such an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for appearing on Enterprise Unlocked.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for joining us for the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast. Please do follow us on social media and subscribe for more ideas and insights. Until next time.